Okay, let's call to order the Narragansett Town Council Executive Session. It's January 30th, and it is 5 p.m. We have a motion to retire to executive session of the Town Council in accordance with Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-4 and 42-46-5A1 to discuss personnel candidates for the position of Assistant Solicitor. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
You have to do a roll call.
Steve Ferrandi, aye.
Deb Kopek, aye.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Evajinsky, aye. Motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 5-4-0, and we will retire and we'll be back. Okay. Okay, so we're back to, from the executive session. Disclosure of votes to exit and return to open session is 5-0. Can I get a motion to seal the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion by Counselor Lawler, seconded by Counselor Ferrandi. Motion passes 5-0. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn by Counselor Lawler, seconded by Counselor Ferrandi. Motion passes 5-0. An executive session is adjourned. Okay, next up is, sorry, we're running a little late. We will now call to order the Narragansett Town Council work session meeting. Today is January 30th, 2023. It is 6:11. So today we will be interviewing it's a work session to interview selected candidates for the planning board. Today we'll be interviewing Ms. Robin Plazek and Mr. Rupert Friday. So we'll be calling up the first candidate, Robin Plazek. You can come up here. So we'll have the council members ask questions.
I'm experienced with the microphone.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with Councilor Cicely Bonanno. Any questions?
Hi, Robin. Nice to have you here tonight. I know that you've served on the board for some time and you've done some great work. Can you identify some of your proudest moments and your decisions on the board over the last year?
Well, I don't know about proud. I'm proud of just being a member of the board because I think that ever since I, decided to have kids and move to this town and raise a family here and be a part of this town, I felt like it was really important to be involved in my community in, more than just a parental way. Whenever I come to a meeting, I always do all my background work. The binders of work are this fat. I always do all the reading. I sort of have, an idea in mind and definitely of the questions that I need to ask people who come before us. But I don't ever make a decision, before I listen to the whole presentation and what the person has to say and why they're asking for the variance and that kind of thing. So I guess I'd say I'm proud of being really objective. And I think that, a lot of different things come our way, so many different things, from environmental issues. I voted against a couple of really sensitive properties, environmentally sensitive. I care a lot about the environment. I've listened to presentations about the library. I've listened to presentations about bulk zoning and, felt comfortable after doing research and my homework and considering where this town should go about all of my votes. So I think, I don't know, I take a lot of pride in serving on the board.
Thank you, Robin.
Kopek, would you like to go next?
Robin, I'm sure you've had to familiarize yourself with Narragansett ordinances. So how do you, are you comfortable working with the ordinances that we have, with how they're set up in the system, in terms of what you have to decide about, make decisions about?
Yes, and if I'm ever not comfortable, I talk to someone in the community development office and, clarify things. I am not a lawyer, so there is always legal language that confuses me. But having served on the planning board for, I'm not even sure how many years, a lot. I've gotten more and more comfortable with the ordinances. I mean, we've rewritten a couple recently or amended some. We've proposed some. So the more you do it, the easier it becomes. I wouldn't want to be the writer of them, but I can definitely help create them.
So sort of along the same lines as what Susan was saying, what do you consider to be the most difficult issue that you have faced on the planning board?
Well, I think there have been a couple issues that have been really difficult, and that's bulk zoning. That was very complicated. And I think the student rental issue, I don't even want to call it a student rental issue, I don't know what to call it, but the capacity on rental property, I don't know how you want to phrase it, but
We usually say
it was
three
really
students.
complicated, and we listened to hours of testimony from students, from parents of students, from the community, and making those decisions, you do want to really think about what is best for the town and the future of the town, and so it's hard because you have a lot of vested interests, and I think all of those people, the students are a super valuable population. The retirees are a super valuable population. The families are a super valuable population. Our summer tourists, they're super important to us. So I think, in these major decisions, you have to weigh all of those people, and that's what makes it complicated.
And what do you believe to be the most important quality that you bring to the board?
I'm a young woman, and I don't say that like I'm a young woman, but I just feel like I represent a perspective on the board that doesn't exist without me, because I have a family, I have a young family, I work at school here in town, I serve on 2 boards in town, and my perspective, I think, is there aren't many people of my age and person who are serving on boards in this town, so I think my perspective is valuable.
Okay, thank you so much.
Councilor Ferrandi?
Thank you, Robin. I know you mentioned the bulk zoning, so I'll ask you, how do you feel that it's working so far as what you had passed? And I know it kind of went through several iterations, but were you in favor of it?
I am in favor of it, and I wish we had put it in place sooner because, we would have avoided, I think, some of the properties that we have in Eastward Look that unfortunately, now we're trying to go back and prevent those from happening again. It recently came back to us for revisions, and we did not approve very many revisions because it hasn't been in place very long, and we wanted to see, what came forward in terms of variances because of bulk zoning, what applications came forward, and there really haven't been very many. So, I think it's taking the builders and that sort of community a while to get adjusted to maybe how strict some of the regulations are, but I do think it's important. And I do, I think the aesthetics of our town are critical. We don't have that many properties left. And so I think focusing on renovating properties and focusing on that bulk zoning is important.
Okay, thank you. I have one more. Do you feel that we need more quality of life ordinances in this town? It's a little open-ended, but,
Yeah, can you, what do you mean?
just more family-friendly, trying to attract more families into the town as opposed to just turning more into an investment community,
Yes. I
full-time
think
rentals, that kind of thing.
we desperately need to focus on how to get families in this town. I work at the Pierce School, and for a long time I worked at the elementary school. So I know all of our schools in this town are under-enrolled, and that has a lot to do with affordability. We just don't have the affordability. But I've also been talking about things since the comprehensive plan was written. I've been talking about things like improving access for pedestrian, like more crosswalks and more sidewalks and, restructuring parks and things like that. Because the fact of the matter is this is a great place for families to live, but it doesn't always seem like a great place for families to live because the resources for families are not, I think, what they should be.
Okay, thanks, Robin.
Sure.
Councilor Lawler?
Thank you. Thank you, Robin. And before we forget, thanks for all of your years of service. It's not always easy, especially when you have a family you're dealing with other things. So I appreciate that. I think the word you were looking for is balance. We want, and I know that many of us up here spoke about balance over the last few months, especially trying to create that better balance for town. As you know, Judge Taft-Carter just recently ruled, as far as the foreign-related, that that's coming back. Understanding that the planning board had voted 5-0 against it, how do you feel now that that is coming back? And you do know from a good portion of the people sitting in front of you that that's something we want to look at. How do you feel as being a planning board member? Has it changed have you changed your stance on the foreign-related?
So I have not changed my stance on the four unrelated, but again, it's something I look at all the details of it. So I'll go back and read it all. I'll read all the testimony from all the people who, thought 3 was right, thought 4 was right. It's a really tricky issue, and I think that I don't mind revisiting it because I want to make sure we get it right when we finally, get it into place and actually enforce it, figure out enforcement, figure out regulation, those sorts of things. So if it needs to come back, it can come back, and it doesn't scare me.
Good. And one other part of it that is probably coming up to you before it would come to us would be the short-term rentals. And again, that would be with the balance, creating an environment in Narragansett where perhaps it's not going to be as lucrative for some of the investors, and we can have some more year-round people come and move in. What are your initial thoughts about short-term rentals, and from seeing and understanding what other municipalities in the state are doing, what discussion points would you think that the planning board should start looking at in terms to being able to make recommendations to us?
Yep. So I have seen that cropping up in other towns, and I'm starting to see some of their solutions, which are interesting. And I don't know what would be the perfect solution for Narragansett, because I feel like we really do rely on the short-term rentals for our tourists to come and have a place to stay. But I do think it's gotten out of hand. It seems like even in my neighborhood, I live in Edgewater, and it is not a rental neighborhood by any stretch of the imagination. It is blue collar, families that have lived there for a long time, lots of little kids. And we even now have some Airbnbs and things near us. And it just, if we're going to do it, I want it to be regulated very carefully. I want it to be, whatever rules we put in place should be enforced. I do think that the fees for rentals are really, really low. My family and I, we moved away one year and we rented our house because we didn't want to sell it because we knew we'd never be able to buy a house in Narragansett again. And the fee to rent my house was $85. And I just thought that that seemed crazy. Like, no, I wasn't renting it as a business person, but if I was, that would be a drop in the bucket. So I do think that I would like to see if we are going to have rentals, that there's more income for the town and more regulation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you again for all your service on the planning board thus far. So I would like, my first question is, tell us about an experience you have had collaborating with a group, particularly where opinions conflicted or the decision was controversial.
Oh my God. I mean, you know I'm a mom, right? Well, I mean, I'm a teacher, so I have to collaborate all the time, teaching, scheduling, disciplining children, putting kids on behavior plans, all sorts of things like that. I work on coastal access, so we've had, issues of collaborating there, collaborating with the community and the town, other town bodies and things like that. So those are just two examples, but also, I mean, I don't know if you listened to that testimony that we sat through with the four student. I mean, that was hours and hours of testimony. So, collaborating with my planning board to come up with what we were going to do and how we were going to listen and, what commentary we would take first and all kinds of like written testimony and verbal testimony. So, I'm no stranger to working with other people as a team all day, every day, basically.
Thank you. Okay, thanks. And describe how the planning board can help achieve the goals of the master plan.
The comprehensive plan, yeah. I mean, I think it's, our role is critical because we can, I mean, the comprehensive plan has goals for the town. And so I think we can really not push those goals, but we can really, prioritize those goals based on what's in the plan and what the community needs. I mean, we were just looking at the parking study. I think that that's a perfect example, and that, that is a goal of the town, to sort out parking. And we have spent many, many hours looking at the parking study and coming up with recommendations for the town for that. Because it is a huge issue in town, and we don't want to go into it lightly. We want to make the right decision. And, I think it's really important. So.
Thank you. And finally, last question. What else would you like us to know about you that makes you a strong candidate for the planning board?
Well, you obviously already know I've served a long time. I am a teacher, so I just have my feet in a lot of places in this town. I wear a lot of hats. So I teach at the Pier Middle School. I have kids as students here in school. I'm on the Coastal Access Committee. I am on planning board. I serve with the Little League. I am on another nonprofit board. So I always just say, like, I was put on this earth to serve. I don't know. I'm a service person, and it's just who I am. I'm here to help.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate that. Anyone else from the council have any additional questions before we go on to the next candidate? Okay. Thank you so much. It's a
Thanks a
pleasure.
lot, Robin.
Okay, next up is Mr. Rupert Friday. And I will,
Good evening.
yeah, sure. And I'm sorry, I should have had, so you can introduce yourself quickly, just a few
Yeah,
words.
so I'm Rupert Friday. I live on Montauk Road, and we have lived there since 2000. And before living in Rhode Island, I lived in Maryland, and before that, I lived in Virginia, and I grew up in the Pittsburgh area, Western Pennsylvania.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this time we'll start questions from Counselor Ferranti.
Okay, thank you, Eva. Good evening, Rupert. I'm looking at the resume a bit, and it shows that you've had a lot of experience in planning and different things, and especially on the state, what is it, the State Land Trust Council. So I'm sure you're well versed at all those issues. Yeah, I don't want it to be, I know it's a little bit vague, but I mean, out of all that, what would bring you, what kind of perspective, kind of unique perspective would bring to the planning board, having all of that experience?
So I have a master's degree in planning, and I have sort of expertise related to natural hazards planning, hurricane planning specifically, transportation planning, and environmental planning, sort of most recently my work with open space conservation and environmental planning. So I think I bring that, as well as my time in Maryland. I coordinated the local government assistance program for the Maryland Department of Planning, and we provided planning assistance to the towns and the counties that didn't have planning staff. So I bring the experience of having worked with a lot of communities, small communities, rural communities. So I think I bring that experience and that background that I think would be helpful in the planning board discussions.
Okay, and another question. Are you familiar with the comp plan? Have you read it and taken a look at it and kind of get yourself familiarized with it?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the comp plan. I've read it twice. I read it about a year and a half ago, and I read it last week. So.
Okay, and getting back to the quality of life ordinances and some of the ordinances that have been passed so far, we talked about the bulk zoning. Do you think any modifications need to be made to that, or any revisions on that?
I don't know the details of the bulk zoning well enough, or how it's sort of the implementation, how it's working. I think the concept is a really good idea. Yeah. And sort of seeing little buildings that were summer cottages, torn down and replaced with very large houses that are out of character with the neighborhood. I think it's good to address those issues.
Okay, thank you, Rupert.
Councilor Lawler, would you like to go next?
Thank you, and I think your resume is excellent, and thank you very much for coming today. Steve asked a good amount of the questions that I wanted to ask, but to ask the same that I gave to Robin, what are your thoughts then with the foreign related and the 3-student ordinance? And then after that, no surprise, I'm going to ask you about the short-term rentals. So could you start then with the foreign related?
Yeah, so I think the 4 unrelated and the 3-student rentals, I'm on record related to the 3-student rentals because I testified in front of you all for that. I think it's important for the town. I think that the 4 unrelated is similarly important for the town. In the time that I've lived here, and really in the last, it's changed a lot in the last 5 years, where you've seen a dramatic increase in outside real estate speculators purchasing land because it's so lucrative to rent. And that makes it really, if a family's trying to live here, I mean, Narragansett's a gem of a town, and families want to live here if they can, but they can't compete with the housing prices when they're bid up by people that are buying them just for rentals, so.
Okay, thank you. And as far as the short-term rentals, what are your thoughts as far as what you would bring
So-
to suggestions to the planning board?
Yeah, so, I mean, Narragansett has a long history of being a town where people have owned houses that they used for the summer and then rented them to students off-season, and then rented them weekly. So I think there's a long history of that, and I think the short-term rental ordinance, I think has to reflect that history, reflect that culture in the town. I think that student rentals, I saw it in every town that I've worked with that had a large university. It's an issue in many towns, as you all know, from looking at the research, doing the ordinance here. The Airbnbs have changed the short-term rental market nationally and in many communities like this. So I think there's a lot of communities really struggling with how do we address that issue and how do we address it thoughtfully. And I think Narragansett's challenge is that dealing with the culture, the long-term culture and the history of the rentals here. How do we adopt something that's respectful of that, but avoid some of the problems that are happening with real estate speculation for short-term rentals.
Thank you.
Councilor Cecilia Bonanno?
A lot of good questions were already asked, so I just wanted to know, there's an affordable housing collaborative, and we've been working really hard to, figure out parcels to, try to have some affordable housing in Narragansett. I just wanted to know your experience around that issue and any creativity or ideas that you would have to move that forward.
Yes, so I was on an affordable housing, Rhode Island Housing had an affordable housing group that I was involved in for a couple of years, so I got a little bit familiar with other programs around the state and in other communities. And I think, I guess the first thing that strikes me about affordable housing, aside from the real estate speculation making it, driving up the prices so much that families can't afford them, but I think what was striking to me coming to Rhode Island and in Narragansett is in Maryland, when affordable housing is constructed or built by the town or built by nonprofit organizations, it stays affordable. And that doesn't seem to happen all the time here. Like the Pier housing, I understand, was a HUD housing project that was built as affordable housing, and it no longer is. So I think that's a real challenge. If we're gonna create new affordable housing, establish new affordable housing, how do we keep it affordable? And I think that's particularly challenging in a beach community like ours, where it's so attractive. And I think some other housing that was built in Narragansett. I live up off of Wampum Road, and there's some duplexes that were built up there. We call them the mushroom houses. I'm pretty sure those were built as affordable units, but I don't think they're affordable anymore. You see the prices they sell for. So I think that's the challenge. And I think an opportunity for affordable housing in Narragansett might be looking at, I don't know what to call them, granny flats, right? Where grandparents can live with their kids. And it's an accessory unit, I think they're considered, so, yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Kopek?
Hello, Rupert, how are you? Thank you for volunteering to be involved with the community. It's really important that we get people out here as much as possible, so I really appreciate that. Do you have, I was curious if you had any, if you'd been to planning board meetings here?
Yeah, so I've been to Planning board meetings the last 2 months here.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been to other planning board meetings in Rhode Island. I came to Rhode Island working with the University of Rhode Island, working on Quinnipiac Island, helping them update their comprehensive plans,
Mm-hmm.
implementing smart growth. So I was involved with all 3 planning commissions, planning boards on Quinnipiac Island at the time. So
And what was your impression of our planning board?
I think you have a great planning board. I felt the meetings were well-run, just, yeah, no, really good. And I've worked with your planner, with Mike for a lot of years.
Yeah, and
You-
land trust
you-
stuff.
You
yeah.
have you've long had a good planning staff. I know Clark Collins was here before Mike, and so, yeah.
Great, thank you. With regard to the work of the planning board, what's the most difficult issue, if you can think of it, that you expect to face?
I think probably the most difficult issues for a planning board is when there's a long-term resident that is, so long-time property owner, long-term resident that is wanting to do something with their property which isn't consistent with the town's ordinance or with the comprehensive plan. I think that's a really challenging situation.
Imagine it would be. And finally, what do you believe is the most important quality that you would bring to this board?
So besides my planning experience and background, I did my graduate work at University of Virginia, and I had a student fellowship at the Institute for Environmental Negotiation, which was a collaborative process organization. So we facilitated conflicts about national forest management plans, about development in the northern neck of Virginia, where you have many, many different interests and many, many different perspectives. And then I was on a community mediation board in Annapolis, the Annapolis Anne Arundel County Community Mediation Board. So I think my experience with collaborative processes and mediation really brings a lot to something like a planning board. And my experience is, we're in a really polarized world, but my experience is when you go out and you interview people and you ask them their perspective on things, usually when people disagree about things, they're not on opposite ends of the spectrum. They're they may disagree about things, but they're not on opposite ends of the spectrum the way it seems in our polarized community today. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so I'll ask the same questions. So tell us about an experience you had collaborating with a group, particularly where opinions conflicted or the decision was controversial.
Decision controversial. I guess, yeah, it takes me back to when I was working at the University of Virginia with the mediation program. We were mediating national forest management plans, and we would have around the table in a room about 30 people dealing with the future of, in one case, Hoosier National Forest. And we had people with interests from wild mushroom harvesting and deer hunting to snowmobilers and ATV users to people that just want a quiet spot that they can walk. I mean, very diverse interests and very different perspectives. And sort of facilitating the discussion to identify the commonalities and what people could agree on it's an interesting process and it's a challenging process.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so describe how the planning board can help achieve the goals of the master plan, the comprehensive master plan.
Well, I think there's a couple ways. I think one is when development proposals come before it, making sure that development proposals reflect the comprehensive plan and the vision of the comprehensive plan. I think identifying opportunities for our ordinances, zoning, subdivision ordinance provisions to implement the comprehensive plan where there's things coming up that aren't consistent with a vision for the future of the community. I think those are sort of the top two that I could think of.
Okay, thank you. And the final question from me is, what else would you like us to know about you that makes you a strong candidate for the planning board?
I guess besides my background in planning and my background in collaborative processes and mediation, the last 15, 20 years, I was the director for the Rhode Island Land Trust Council, which was a state coalition of community land trusts like the Narragansett Land Trust. And we did a lot of state policy work related to that. So I think my experience related to that and in the State House might be useful to the town working on planning issues and going forwards.
Thank you. Do any council members have any additional questions? Okay. Well, thank you for your
Thank you.
time.
Thank you, Ruben.
And with no more questions, we are going to adjourn our work session. So thank you.